In fact, I'm fine being inside anywhere. Ethel Merman was getting ready for another amazing performance at the Academy Awards in April 1983. But at 2:15 p.m., Ethel Merman passed out in her Manhattan flat. The woman who never needed a microphone could hardly speak after a few days. For decades, no one knew the real story of what happened next. We're going to tell you the story of Broadway's biggest star that has never been told before, along with her sad last act. On January 16, 1908, Ethel Merman was born in Astoria, Queens, at the home of her grandma. There wasn't much going on in her early life, but she lived near the Astoria studios, where movie stars in fancy cars would drive by. As a child, Ethel dreamed of becoming a star like them, even though it seemed impossible at the time. Ethel's voice was clear even when she was a little girl. Everyone at church was amazed by how well she could sing. People soon noticed how talented she was, and she began singing at small events in her area. But her folks weren't always on board with her dreams. Her parents were afraid that show business wouldn't be safe, so they told her to focus on useful skills instead. Ethel hadn't taken any lessons in music. She taught herself everything, and singers like George Gershwin told her she should never take singing classes because her voice was so good on its own. He thought her voice was perfect the way it was raw and strong. In turn, this became one of the keys to her unique sound. At the end of high school in 1924, Ethel didn't start singing right away. She got a regular job as a stenographer instead, where she typed and filed papers. Even though she worked hard, things didn't go as planned. He told her about a better job at another company with a small pay raise while they were having lunch one day. Her answer was yes, and soon she was working as Caleb Bragg's secretary. As a car race fan, Bragg was often away, giving Ethel time to rest during the day after her late-night singing jobs. Ethel began to play at clubs and private parties at night. It was clear that she was determined, and she slowly became known as a singer. She changed her name from Zimmerman to Merman because she thought the full name would take up too much space on stage signs. For the first time, Ethel Merman took the stage on Broadway on October 14, 1930. She changed everything. She was only 21 years old and had never taken singing classes before. She had been a stenographer a few weeks before, typing away in an office. He then heard her singing at a nightclub and hired her. His name is Vinton Friedel. He saw right away that she was special and put her in Girl Crazy. The pit orchestra for the show was great, with future stars like Glenn Miller, Gene Krupa, and Benny Goodman. On opening night, George Gershwin himself led the orchestra, which made things even more exciting. Merman forgot to leave the stage after her first song as a cafe singer, so she stood there awkwardly until a stagehand told her to go. People thought it was cute, which made her more likable. It wasn't much money, $377.50 a week, but she didn't mind. The show was a hit. It ran for 272 performances, which is pretty long for the 1930s. While the show was going on, Merman even kept her day job as a secretary. When she sang "I Got Rhythm," it was her big moment. She hit the last note on opening night and held it for a long time. The crowd was so shocked that they couldn't speak. Then there was a huge round of applause. She became a star after that one show. It's funny that she almost didn't write the song. It was supposed to be a soft song for someone else, but Gershwin gave it to Merman because he thought it wasn't working. She turned it into the catchy, show-stopping song we know it as today. Because her singing was so powerful, it changed the way Broadway music was put together. Ahead of Merman. Orchestras often played too loud for singers, but her voice was so strong that arrangers began to back off, giving singers more room to shine. That was not the end of Merman's rise. Anything Goes, which came out in 1934, was another big hit with her. She almost didn't get the part of Reno Sweeney. It was to be played by someone else. But when that didn't work out, Cole Porter pushed on Merman. There were many problems at the last minute with the production, including having to rewrite parts of the story, because a real-life shipwreck made the first draft awkward. Merman did a great job with everything and learned new songs and lines quickly. She had more hits on the show, such as I Get a Kick Out of You and Anything Goes. Her voice became well known. Even though she didn't use a mic, people in the back row of the theater could still hear her. He told her not to take singing lessons one time because he didn't want anyone to mess up her natural ability. Her straightforwardness was also well known. During a show, her co-star once missed his cue, so she yelled his name so loudly that everyone in the room could hear it. She thought that getting into Hollywood would be her big break. During the Great Depression, when she was 22, she signed a 6-month deal with Warner Brothers to make $125 a week, a huge amount at the time. She quit her job as a stenographer and was ready to become famous, but things didn't go as planned. There was no work for weeks. She just sat there, angry and bored. Merman didn't like to wait, so she told her lawyer to leave the deal. He made a new deal for her instead. She could keep working for Warner Brothers, but she could also do shows in clubs. She was able to stay busy and build her image this way. She quickly got her first movie part. In 1930, she filled in for another actor in the lead role of Follow the Leader. It helped her get jobs, like a 7-week run at the Brooklyn Paramount and a big salary at the Palace. She soon learned, though, that movies weren't what she had hoped for. She was in the 1934 comedy We're Not Dressing with Bing Crosby and Carole Lombard. She thought the process was strange. Having to do so many takes and not having a live crowd made her feel disconnected. She missed the thrill and energy of being on stage. It was the worst letdown when Anything Goes was turned into a movie in 1936. Merman was a big star in the Broadway show, so she thought the movie would be just as good. But Hollywood changed everything. A lot of Cole Porter's songs were taken out, and the ones that were left were redone. Even her performance of the theme song was cut down to just one line in the credits. Extra songs written by other people were added, and the movie didn't feel like the Broadway show she loved. Also, critics noticed and said the movie wasn't as good as the original. For Merman, it broke her heart. The opening of We're Not Dressing was one of the most embarrassing times in her career. She had asked family and friends to come see her on the big screen. She saw that one of her singing scenes had been cut as the movie played. She didn't know that. She felt bad as her family and friends watched a movie where her part had been cut down. The part of the movie where she sings It's the Animal in Me, with a line of elephants, was cut because it was thought to be too much. The worst part? The song was then used in a different movie, but Merman wasn't in it. She felt ashamed and even more sure that Hollywood wasn't for her after the opening. In the end, she said, "Everything seemed fake. I liked being in charge. You couldn't be in movies." Merman went back to Broadway, where she belonged, after these events. In 1934, she played the lead role in the play Anything Goes. It was such a huge hit that it ran for 420 shows. The stage, not Hollywood, let her shine. People loved her strong voice and brave attitude. Songs like I Get a Kick Out of You and Blow, Gabriel Blow became well known in the theater because of her. After that, her career took off like a rocket. In 1936, she was in hits like Red, Hot, and Blue. In 1939, she was a lady. But Annie Get Your Gun, which came out in 1946, was her biggest hit, in the role of Annie Oakley. When Merman sang There's No Business Like Show Business, it became one of her most popular songs. The show had more than 1,100 performances, and she even came back 20 years later for a repeat. During all of this, Ethel Merman had a terrible secret in her private life. They were together from 1939 to 1944. Sherman Billingsley ran the famous Stork Club in New York City and was her lover. People from wealth and fame went to the Stork Club to see and be seen. This made Billingsley a powerful person in high society. What's the twist? Even though Billingsley was married, they were having an affair that no one could see. When it all started, Merman was 31 years old and at the height of her fame. He was 43 years old, had been married for more than 10 years, and was deeply in love with her. He treated her like a queen. He even hired a waiter to just watch her and light her cigarettes. The club workers and regulars knew about their relationship, but they tried to keep it out of the news. Billingsley did a lot to keep Merman in his life. She turned down his offer of $50,000, which is about $1 million today, to leave her second husband, Robert Levitt. But Merman said no and chose to hide her affair instead. Billingsley, on the other hand, used his power to help her success. It became even more well known for her because he made sure the Stork Club was full of theater fans. The love story did have a bad side, though. Billingsley's anger reached a peak in 1943. He thought that another man was interested in Merman one night, so he had his bouncers beat up the other man in the kitchen. He would do anything to keep her attention. It was a scary moment. By 1944, Merman could no longer handle keeping their secret. Due to her guilt over how their relationship was affecting Billingsley's family, she chose to end it. To get away from things, she quickly married Hollywood agent William Smith. They made up their minds quickly, but they never lived together because she wouldn't leave New York for Hollywood. It was over after only 283 days. Afterwards, Smith made a joke that about sums up their short and rough relationship. Her second marriage to Robert Levitt in 1941 got off to a good start. For a while, they looked happy with their two kids. But Robert's drinking and acting in strange ways messed things up. In 1952, after 11 years together, they split up. After 6 years, things got worse when Robert killed himself, leaving Ethel to raise their children by herself. Ethel married Robert Six, who worked for an airline in 1953. But Six had other plans. She even quit show business for a short time to be a housewife in Colorado. He asked Ethel to help sell his airline, but she didn't like being known for something. In 1960, they were no longer married because of problems with money and claims that she was cheating. On her fourth marriage to actor Ernest Borgnine in 1964, there was the most trouble. It was over in 32 days. They fought while they were on their honeymoon because fans liked Borgnine more than she did. The marriage was over by the time they got home. Borgnine asked for a divorce and said she was mean to him, so Ethel said the same thing back. A few years later, in her book, she joked about how empty it was by adding a blank page called My Marriage to Ernest Borgnine. Ethel always had a hard time juggling her work and home life. Hit Broadway shows like Annie, Get Your Gun, and Gypsy kept calling her back. With 8 shows a week, she still tried to be there for her 2 kids. Her way of teaching was strict and straightforward. Robert Jr., her son, once said that she loved her fans but kept everyone else, even her family, at a remove. In 1967, she went through the worst time of her life. Ethel I, her daughter, died of an overdose when she was only 25 years old. Some people thought it might have been suicide, but Ethel said it was a mistake with her depression medicine. She was crushed by the loss. She kept going because of her faith, but she was changed after that. Ethel kept singing even though her life was up and down. She played the lead role in the 1950 musical Call Me Madam, which was about a brave Washington hostess who becomes a diplomat. Sally Adams was played by Ethel, a character who was funny and honest that seemed like it was made just for her. Songs like You're Just in Love and The Hostess with the Mostess on the Ball brought the show to life with her strong singing and great comedic timing. The show ran for 644 performances because it was so popular.